Hi, I'm Lily, and I'm researching school segregation in New York City. So, I'm just going to show some of the graphs and data sets that I've been using in my research based on New York City school segregation, um, just as a backdrop while I'm speaking, um, as well as the mapping inequality redlining map for New York City from the 40s. So, I think that the majority of people in this country would probably say that school segregation has long since ended and would further assert that it ended with the Brown v. Board of Education Supreme Court case or maybe during the Civil Rights Movement. And in many ways, this is true, but the reality is that de facto school segregation very much still exists in this country and continues to infringe on the rights of students while inhibiting their access to more promising futures. This is a planning issue as well as an education issue because we all know that in the current system, the primary factor in determining the school that a child attends is usually where they live. So, residentially segregated areas that have resulted from redlining and other discriminatory housing practices that we've learned about this semester often create segregated schools as a result. But one thing that complicates this issue is that between those segregated neighborhoods and schools, there are great disparities in wealth and therefore the quality of the schools and ultimately the success of the students. Um, so, the conceptualization of the problem is pretty straightforward, especially given the knowledge base that we're all approaching it with after this semester's readings. But the solution is, of course, not so straightforward. There have been efforts over time from schools, from individual parents, from courts, and from legislature to try to correct this problem and integrate schools, but there's often resistance from parents in the high achieving schools against integration, despite the fact that integration has been proven in simplest terms to not hurt the advantaged kids, which are typically white kids, while it does have massive beneficial impacts for racially, ethnically, and socioeconomically marginalized students. Um, there's also often sudden reversal of progress that is made towards integrating schools, either because people in charge don't realize the negative impact that they're producing with, say, like a court decision or something as well as turnover in politicians, leading to deliberate reversals of progress for various reasons. Um, so, right now in my research, I've focused a lot on conceptualizing the issue from an educational standpoint and trying to understand the impacts of desegregated schools. And I've been finding a lot of data on NYC schools and their racial composition compared to their quality and accreditation and test scores, etc., as well as looking for anecdotal accounts from families in these schools. Um, and after I got that framework on the educational side of the issue, I started shifting my focus to outlining a timeline of the history of zoning in New York City and the key moments that have led to trends in enrollment and achievement that we see today. Um, so that's where I am now in the process. I have a general outline of zoning resolutions beginning in 1916, conferences on urban planning issues in New York City, court decisions, legislation, that type of stuff. Going forward, I'm hoping to identify some ways that the issue could be addressed through a combination of efforts from the justice system, the educational system, and urban planners. I'm certainly not an expert in any of these fields, and this issue is incredibly complex with roots in all sorts of other injustices, but hopefully I'll be able to come up with some sort of steps to take towards at least improving the integration of schools and expanding the population of students with access to the equity and quality education and economic opportunity, and so on, that this nation promises to all students but only seems to afford to some. Um, so yeah, that's how it's going. Thank you.